Are you curious as to how the plants from most recent Ecuagenera approaches are doing? Stick around and let's look at my 2-week update. Hi, my name is Memo, this is my channel, Houseplantygoodness, and essentially it's a place where I like to geek out about my big passion. You might be able to see some of it behind me, it's tropical houseplants. So today I'm going to do the 2-week update that I normally do after I get a purchase from an import, basically. So this time around it was Ecuagenera again, and it was based on my most recent purchase, which I've done a video up here of the unboxing if you want to check that out if you haven't. And yeah, so shall we look at how things are settling in? So starting off with the plant that truly did surprise me, and I am thoroughly enjoying watching it grow, the Anthurium arisaemoides? There was an amazing person on that video that kind of helped me with my Latin, and I've already forgotten the pronunciation. I think it's arisaemoides. But this, which is really giving that kind of luxuriance, kind of textured leaves, it's giving Monstera spar Peru. Ah, beautiful. And it's doing very, very well. Ooh, and there is a new growth point that is just coming in. You might be able to see just there. Yeah, amazing. This is still in, and I put this in to the semi-hydro coarse mix from Soil Ninja, and most of my anthuriums love life in this mixture. So yeah, without a shadow of a doubt, I don't generally attempt most anthuriums in anything else. I think something that I was going to put in the soil mix, I didn't in the end. I think I ended up putting every anthurium that I had into the semi-hydro mix. The interesting thing that I will say about this and all the other anthuriums, I did my usual thing where I say, you know what, let's do every 7 days for watering, or at least checking for watering. No. Pretty much everything went straight after like the first 3 or 4 days. I'm just like, nope, everything is bone dry, it needs watering. So it went on to watering every 4 days. And it's recently transitioned very quickly into a water reservoir because this space gets very, very hot now where it's the summer and it's very warm generally. But this so far is doing really, really, really well. And the leaves have kind of stiffened up and they are spectacular. Not one that a lot of people know about, but definitely one that I would say if you have a chance to pick one up or see one in somebody else's collection, check it out. This is very, very cool plant. I think it will only ever get the 3 kind of leaflets on each petiole, but beautiful, 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 beautiful. And it's one that tends to grow upright quite a bit, basically. So you would imagine, I don't think this is kind of giving out willingly a lot of aerial roots from what I can see, but it kind of seems like it's growing in an upright manner, so something to bear in mind. Next Anthurium, and this is the Anthurium pinkleyi, I think it is. I'm not entirely sure that that is the correct pronunciation with this, but the leaves have kind of uncrinkled themselves and you can kind of see the kind of shape of these leaves. It is giving a bit of that Tesla plant, and I know that's not for everybody, but you can kind of see what attracted me to this plant. Not everything has bounced back in the way that it would grow naturally, but I don't know if you can see that kind of cupping notion that's happening there on that leaf. That's what most of these leaves will get, and I thought that's why, for me, it was quite an interesting plant. Very similar to the Anthurium arrow, and I can never remember what the scientific name is, and I'll see if I can put it at the top there. But again, semi-hydro mix, and again, on a 4-day watering schedule or check and then water, and in a reservoir already, and it's doing quite well. The root systems on most of these things were really good. The thing that I kind of discovered with this one specifically, And I only saw this afterwards when I was kind of filming the B-roll, and I'm hoping it might come up. Can you see that little bit there? So that, I think, was a pup that they cut off and kept for themselves to grow potentially. So this might be a plant, and there was two of them. I don't know where the second one is on this. It might be buried underneath some of the leca. So I've kind of kept that in there because I don't know. There's a node at the very bottom, so that might activate. But this seems like it might be an Anthurium that pups quite regularly, because there was two, as I said, and it's not a massively kind of mature specimen. And if I looked at the stem that it came with, it's as thick as that is, so it wasn't taken from a bigger plant. Thus, you know what I'm trying to say. It wasn't a more mature plant that would then pup more easily from the plant of this size is when it started pupping. So very, very cool. But yeah, very, very happy. The kind of slight crispiness that you're seeing on the edges there is this is getting an awful lot of light, and it's actually managing to keep the slightly darker leaves. So yeah, really enjoying this one. And I kind of knew that this might be an oddball, but I'm still enjoying this and still doing well for now anyway. Moving on to one of the philodendrons. So this is the philodendron Heleniae, subspecies Heleniae. It has fully unfurled, and it is very much a showpiece plant. I mean, oh, these leaves, absolutely amazing. I did notice something after I filmed the previous video. There's a bit of marking at the bottom, and that is how the plant came with, but you can see that newest leaf is slowly starting to unfurl. I'm not going to touch it too much because I have lost one too many leaves that way, but this is doing really well. This is in an aroid mix, or this is in the philodendron mix from the peeps at Soil Ninja. So far, really, really good. These were, nearly all of the philodendrons, I did the 7-day thing again. Those didn't move to like 4 days, and obviously there's no water reservoir because soil mix, but I think they're on every 5 days to check and water now. But this plant I have got high hopes for, basically, because it does seem like it hasn't really skipped much of a beat. And considering how stiff and leathery those leaves are, yeah, it's definitely giving Heterocraspidum or Esmeraldense vibe for sure. And yeah, it hasn't skipped a beat. Should I put it into a janky support stick because it wobbles a lot? Probably. But so far, so good. And I do love these pots, and I always get really disappointed when they run out of stock, because I think a lot of people love these pots. These are the aroid tower pots from Soul Ninja. By the way, none of this is sponsored. Most of my video, I don't think I've ever done a sponsored video, but honest opinion, these are really cool. Really, really cool for the squareness and for the height as well. But yeah, very, very cool. It's the same thing with the soil media. It's done really well. And yeah, the plant is doing quite interestingly good. And I'm trying to see if I can bring it in so you might be able to see the water droplets there. So definitely one with extra floral nectaries. So don't let that freak you out if you see it. But I'm impressed on how quickly this plant stabilized. I mean, it came in relatively good condition. So, but yeah, wow. This is one to watch out for. Moving on to the plant that stressed me out, and I think everybody else that has owned one before. This is still alive. 2 weeks later, I am super proud. Doesn't mean it's not going to go down here. I am not going to get cocky. So this is the Anthurium cutucuense. Cutucuense, yeah. The leaves have kind of stabilized. I had to take that section off because I don't know if you remember from that original video, it was kind of sliced and it kind of had some damage and it was starting to die off, and there was no part that was still connecting it to the bottom bit, so it was drying out anyway, so I had to cut that off. However, I don't know if you can see, oh, there's a new leaf. I cannot take credit for that because it was already in the cataphyll when it arrived to me, but It is coming through, and you might be able to see, can you see the 3 little leaflets, the one longest and the 2 shorter ones there as well? It seems to be happy because it's got a little aerial root that is happening. I don't know whether you'll be able to see right there. And that's happened since it came into my care. The leaves are very turgid, like everybody else. And it's interesting because I did this kind of instinctively. This one went on to the more frequent watering like everything else did, but this one was the one reason I'm just like this. I'm not messing around. This needs a water reservoir super quickly. And based on what everybody else was saying, when they all started having success was when it was in a semi-hydro, and this was the one that I was thinking about putting in a soil mix into the Anthurium soil mix from Soil Ninjas, which is a shame because I still haven't tried it. I did buy a bag. At some point I'm going to try it. But everybody that's had success that said, or at least their plants are happier. I don't think anybody's plant is super happy, are in semi-hydro, and a lot of them I've got them in closed vessels where they don't, so there's a water reservoir essentially rather than it just draining out. So yes, this is bringing me so much joy because it's the randomest and weirdest of all plants. But I will be so chuffed if I can keep this alive and happy-ish for as long as I can. You know, when you kind of already have assumed that this is probably going to go down a hill, so I will enjoy it for however long I can. With this plant for me. But yeah, so far, touch wood, so good. Oh, and one last thing before I put this down. I will agree with what everybody else was saying. It needs a temperature differential between night and day, and it does get it in this space because it can be very, very warm in here during the day, but at night there's at least a 10 to 15 degree temperature drop. So it might hit 30 degrees Celsius during the day, but at night it will drop down to 15, 16, 17. So it gets that drop that it needs. Winter is going to be interesting with this one, but we shall see. So the other Anthurium that a lot of people did correct me because I got it wrong on my video. So this is the Anthurium watermaliense. And it's the one that I was a bit underwhelmed with. I'm not gonna lie, I'm still a bit underwhelmed with this. It's kind of lost a couple of its lowest leaves because it did dry out a bit in those kind of first couple of days until it started getting a reservoir. It is now in a reservoir, and I'm trying to see if there's any root rot that is happening. No. Ooh, I say this. This might be one that the reservoir might need to kind of not be happening because some of these roots do look like they're rotting out. So potentially this one's reservoir is going to not get refilled, basically, which kind of makes sense because a lot of the Anthuriums, this is the thinnest leafed one. So the point I was trying to make is the watermaliense I kind of thought was the waterburyanum. I think it's waterburyanum, and that's the one that is cross-pollinated a lot of the times with the Queen Anthurium, with the Anthurium warocreanum, which you can kind of see behind that leaf that was hardening off is finally finished hardening off, so it's done well. I do think everybody who told me that it was the waterburyanum, I did need to know that basically, but at the same time I'm just like, I wasn't gonna put another order in. I thought I got everything that I needed for this year, or that I wanted to get for this year, because I thought I was getting the waterburyanum, and now that I'm just like, I now need to find one of those. So if you're in the UK and you know anybody that's selling them for a reasonable price, let me know. Because actually, interestingly, the people that do own the waterburyanum, pretty much every single one of you that has fed back and said your experiences with that plant, you're all generally quite happy with it, basically. So, again, did not need to know this. Just a labeling at this point, but yes, it probably will be purchased. Which might be good because considering what I'm seeing with the roots on this one, this might not be around for too long. Poor little thing, it never really had the love for me. Am I gonna be disappointed? Probably not. I'm trying to see if there's any good roots in this actually, and I don't know whether or not there are. Maybe. It's mainly the finer roots that have had issues, but I tend to find that the anthuriums will generally bounce back. So far so good with this one as well. Still underwhelmed, but just me. This is just my opinion, basically. Moving on to another not anthurium, philodendron. So this is a philodendron. Can you see why I love the labels from Ecuagenera? Because until I get familiar with the names of these plants, it takes me a while. So the Philodendron rubrocinctum platinum. So this is an interesting one because, and I only kind of discovered this when I was taking the roots out of the damn sphagnum moss. Which, to be fair, actually, by the end of the day, there seemed that there was a bit more moisture than I thought in that sphagnum moss, basically. So this is an interesting one because the roots on this were shocking. These were similar roots to what I was expecting from most of the other philodendrons, even though most of the other philodendrons, their roots were spectacular. These were of the level that you would be expecting, basically. And I've had to the janky support stick is doing the mostest for this one. So it's got the two little plant ties at the top because this was just really unruly in the way that it's done. Has it really stiffened up a bit? Kind of. Has it fully bounced back? No, because the roots on this were at least 50 to 60% root rot, basically. And it was mainly because it dried out. But similar to the Heterocraspidum, and I don't know, I'm still not entirely sure. The way that it's growing to me would suggest this is not a crawler. And I can't remember if anybody made this comment on the previous video. If you've got this, is this a crawler or is this a climber? Because I want to say climber based on what I'm seeing. And based on the roots and how fine they are, I would lean towards crawler, interestingly enough, because I found with most of the crawlers, they tend to have much thinner philodendron roots, and this one really did. Again, I don't know because so many of them were desiccated because they were dry. So this is one that's on the struggle bus. It is in the philodendron soil mix from the guys at Soil Ninja. And so far it's doing well-ish, I think. This is going to take a while. Nothing, so the cataphyls don't feel dehydrated. It seems all right. It doesn't seem like the leaves are getting particularly thick, but I do think that this is going to have floppy-ish leaves for a bit until it kind of stabilizes a bit more. But as a floppy, this is the same kind of consistency as the Philodendron pasterzanum. And I think somebody else was saying that, but I think they've got this one, or maybe not the platinum one. But they were saying that this is one spider mites potentially, like the pasterzanum. And I would agree. I haven't got any spider mites yet on this one, or maybe it was mealybugs. But yeah, pasterzanum, mealybugs, and spider mites. That's when I gave up with the pasterzanum. Pasterzanum, spoiler, does not exist in this collection anymore, basically. But I got the one that I truly wanted, which was the Dean McDowell. So that one's fine. But this one, we'll see. I am looking forward to, I'm hoping this does kind of balance out a bit more. But we shall see. But so far, this is one that's maybe a bit on the struggle bus, basically, still. So moving on to the really expensive purchases. So say hello to the newest leaf of the Philodendron Spiritus sancti. And again, I cannot take claims. And oh my God, there is another cataphyl that is coming in there. I don't know whether or not this is going to pick up on camera, or another new leaf that's coming in there. Annoyingly, and I don't know whether or not you can notice this, you might be able to see. Can anybody say Pink Princess in terms of that bend there in that cataphyl? And hopefully this one might actually show. There, you can see it better there. That was user error rather than the plant error, because I don't know if you can see the little plant tie that was there. It was tied to that plant because there's not very much stem yet, and this was floppy as all get out. So I attached it and I hadn't realized until thankfully I filmed this video, because I then saw that it was bending. This might still be salvageable. It might still straighten out. And I'm really hoping that doesn't cause an issue with that next new leaf. But so far, so good with this. The leaves are thinner than I thought they were going to be for this philodendron. For some reason, when I was looking at the pictures, especially the mature plants, I kind of thought that they were going to be stiffer. So think of the Heleniae, subspecies Heleniae. This, some of it, I don't know. The original leaves are thicker, but the newest leaves tend to be a lot thinner, basically. Think Esmeraldense thickness, basically. But yeah, it's doing well. It's uneventful, but I know from some people that have got it, and they were mentioning on that previous video, that it's a vaguely consistent growth for them, about 1 new leaf a month. So it's all right. This will be an epic review video when it happens in a year's time. Hopefully, there'll be more plant to show at that point. But so far, so good. And this is tiniest little pot, because it had the tiniest little root system. The roots were good on this one. They were quite healthy, which I'm quite glad about. And this is in the philodendron mix from the guys at Soil Ninja. Again, it just proves how much I really trust what they do with what they do, basically. So yeah, so far, really good. And interestingly, the piece de resistance, which I'm quite glad, I think I've found my people definitely on this channel, because everybody was as excited about this as I was. The Philodendron Esmeralda Spirit, which is the hybrid between the Esmeraldense newest leaf, janky support sticks for the win. The Philodendron Esmeralda Spirit, Esmeraldense hybridized with the spiritus sancti. Oh. I mean, and I think everybody liked this, and I think the reason they were just like, it's more impressive. It is similar price as the other one, but this is a more mature, still juvenile plant, but this is a more mature plant than the spiritus sancti. But again, the spiritus sancti, I would imagine if everybody waits for another year, you'll probably be getting more mature specimens of that for kind of similar prices, I would imagine. But yeah, same thing. In the philodendron mix by Soil Ninja, loving life. I'm using my clear pots with the with the holes in them as well. And I think these are just actually just orchid pots, basically. But the thing that I can say about this so far, it's reacting and it's growing very similar to the Esmeraldense. And you probably can see it because it's usually behind where the Florida Ghost is. It's kind of on the side there because obviously all the roughly goodness is up behind. But yeah, this is really, really cool. The one thing I will say, this gets quite a lot of light. I'm trying to see. There's a lot of darkness on these leaves, and I don't know whether or not it's going to pick up. There's also a tiny bit of redness that's on the back of these leaves that I hadn't realized it when I was unboxing. There's a smallest bit of a blush, which is quite interesting because the Esmeraldense, I don't think, has a blush, and neither does the Spiritus, I don't think. So quite where that came from, I don't know. But it might just be the more juvenile leaves, basically. But very, very fond of this and doing well. I mean, predominantly doing well. There you go, you can see where it lives now, so you can spot it. If you ever want to see it on my videos, it will be within frame most of the times. But overall, probably the best experience I've had. Not the best experience, but the best experience so far with Ecuagenera imports. Yes, there is the one where the roots were really kind of rotted. Yes, there is. Was that the only one? Possibly. I mean, everything else, most of it was user error. The watermaliense, I think that's user error because I was trying to put it into a reservoir probably faster than that one needed. The others seem to have done well in it, but that one I think. But yeah, overall, so far so good. And I know most times people might want to see a bit of the juicy, what went wrong? There wasn't much of one on this one. Like, there is that kind of one issue with that one, but other than that, it was a better one. And it kind of aligns with what I think when it comes to importing, not just from Ecuagenera, from a lot of these kind of companies that are going to be shipping into wherever you are. In the summer months, it's probably the less risky time. Yes, you will have risks, as in like if you've got an unseasonable heat wave and they're stuck in customs for days on end, you'll probably get quite kind of dried plants, which arguably, for me, at least in my experience, slightly drier plants, as long as they're not fully dust by the time they arrive to you, even if they've lost most of their roots, I find that is easier to come back from than potentially something like root rot because of the winter and it's kept too cold and too moist for too long, basically. So there is that. So around, and I think most people know this, if you're getting the delivery, not the order, not placing the order because obviously it takes a while, but getting the delivery in July or August, that's probably going to be the safest bets. But yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed. Let me know if you had favorites before and if they've changed at all for this one. And yeah, I shall catch you very, very soon. Hopefully you have a great rest of your day and yeah, speak to you soon. Bye.